my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a beautiful October day afternoon here at Homesteading Off the Grid for another reading from October Nights, Part 2, 31 tales for the Halloween season, 31 more tales for the Halloween season. Shut up. So anyway, we're going with a different view, a different angle here today for today's reading because I wanted to get a shot of our pond in the video because there's a pond in the story today, so it's kind of relevant. What could this be? Oh, you needed some air? Look, Jack and Jill Corn has joined us. Now, have you gotten yours on Etsy yet from our Etsy store, from the link in the description box below? Because as you know, for these little guys and girls, we wouldn't even be celebrating Halloween because of that wicked Bible-beating guy, Pastor Black. So anyway, let them out so they can get some air. It's funny, I'm going to preface this story with this. When you're a writer, people that know you or that you know will often read your books or they'll read some of your short stories and they're convinced that you wrote about them. They're convinced that you told their story. Sometimes they're flattered by this. Sometimes they're pissed off about it. What I will tell you is this. Listen, if you know me, you're not that important to where I would write about you. Okay? That's never the case. You have stories and you write about them, but somebody thinks, oh, you were writing about me because I was that one character. No, you weren't. All right? However, this time around with this book, if you think you recognize yourself in here because you know me personally, two things. You may be right. And number two, you better hope you're wrong. Because as you'll find out by the time we get to the end of this big old thick piece of literature collection, by the end of this beautiful month of October, you don't want any of these stories to be about you. Because if they are, just wait. All right, so with no further ado, as my beautiful bride Dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl, would say, gosh, it's such a beautiful day. On a day like today, I'm glad I have the job I have. I'm glad I don't have like a real job. But as you'll soon find out by listening to our tale, you better have some kind of job. This story is called Deadbeat, originally titled The Unfortunate Demise of Uncle Gimpy. There are two places where common, ordinary people such as myself and most of my friends can solve all the world's problems. One such place is by the side of a campfire, and me and a few of my best good buddies spend quite a bit of time regularly solving the world's problems around campfires at our family's private campground here on our Central Virginia homestead. And that campground's way up there at the top of the hill. And then there are college football game tailgate parties. It was about a year ago, as of this writing, 2 years ago as of this reading actually, where me and a few of my best good buddies were solving all the world's problems when I came across the tale of the very unfortunate demise of Uncle Gimpy, which I will relate at this time. I'd been tailgating with some of my regular tailgating buddies at yet another home UVA football game in Charlottesville. Our conversation had made its way to the issue of the vast, seemingly growing number of what I often refer to as beta males in American society. Now, before you jump to conclusions and start calling me all kinds of bad things that I'm not, let me point out exactly what I mean by beta male. It has nothing to do with sexual preference or gender identification or any of the other hot button issues the lamestream media likes to use to pit people off against each other and get them hating each other and fighting all the time. The term could be defined most simply with one word: deadbeat. Beta males are basically the opposite of alpha males. Whereas alpha males are driven, ambitious, self-motivated go-getters who are high producers at their businesses, jobs, or in their professions, and typically provide very well for their families, Beta males are none of these things. Rather, they are lazy and unmotivated. They lack any sort of self-motivating abilities and are therefore incorrigible. They typically never achieve anything of note, and they depend upon other people taking care of them and providing for them, whether it be the taxpayer by way of entitlements, or perhaps a family member with means, usually a parent or an in-law, or, in the most pathetic case as far as this writer sees it, by mooching off of a hard-working woman who is an alpha, who goes out and works and brings home the bacon and fries it up in a pan and all that jazz, but who obviously has deeply rooted insecurities and willingly plays the role of a sucker, because otherwise she would not tolerate caring for and providing for such a deadbeat. I think you hit the nail on the head, one of my best good tailgating buddies in attendance said after I'd mentioned my hunch about this last part, i.e. the deeply rooted insecurities of the alpha females who tolerate deadbeats. He agreed with me because, and as he hated to admit it, he'd had an uncle who was one such beta male deadbeat. We all tried to console him, admitting that many of us either have a beta male in our family, or worse, some of us have alpha male female sisters who've ended up with such deadbeats. My tailgating buddy's uncle was named Gimpy. Well, not really, but that's what we'll call him. You see, his left leg was nearly a foot shorter than his right leg. He wore one of those special shoes with the big rubber soles on the bottom so he could walk without wobbling around too much. Gimpy's physical condition was just one of numerous excuses he would use to remain mostly unemployed. At times, when forced to get a job by way of his extremely frustrated alpha female wife, Rachel, he would make sure to become underemployed, intentionally, not earning enough money to make it worth the time and gas money to even show up for work. But even these periods didn't last long, however, as Gimpy was the kind of deadbeat that even when he would go out and get a job, he would never keep it for more than 3 or 4 days, usually, but every now and then 3 or 4 weeks. In a word, Gimpy never held a job for an entire month at any point in his life. I think Aunt Rachel was insecure about her size, my buddy told us as he began giving more details about his mother's slightly younger brother, Gimpy, and the life that he'd led. Rachel was an absolutely beautiful woman, my buddy said, but she stood just a bit over 6 feet tall and was pushing close to 200 pounds. She was just big, and I think she was insecure about that, so she married down in choosing Uncle Gimpy. My best good buddy said that his Aunt Rachel, long dead now, had been a teacher, a profession not known for a great income. The silver lining on the cloud of her economic condition was that her parents had been affluent. They'd always helped support their daughter, though she never needed the help until she took on Uncle Gimpy as dead weight. And when they died, they'd left her a considerable amount of money as well as the farm that had been in the family for several generations. Her father had raised cattle, but Rachel had wanted nothing to do with farming. She allowed other farmers to lease her land to run their cattle and cut the hay, but that was all for a marginal amount of money, just enough to pay the property taxes. So to avoid dipping into her inheritance funds, to the best of her ability, she taught school. She loved teaching school, and she was considered among one of the best teachers at her school by her students and co-workers alike. She just had really terrible taste in men, at least when she'd made the decision to shack up with Uncle Gimpy. And again, this seemed to all be rooted back to insecurities in regard to her size. You'll have to pardon me for just a second as I'm a bit parched. Water. Mother Nature's milk. Uncle Gimpy spent most of his days inside the old farmhouse his wife had inherited. He had his particular television shows he liked to watch, which I would imagine were probably much like Maury Povich or Judge Judy at the time. This is going back years, you know. When his shows were over, if it wasn't too hot outside or too cold, Uncle Gimpy seemed to be extremely weather sensitive. He would often toss a line in the old cattle pond on the far end of the property and sit there and drink beer waiting for the fish to bite. See, told you there was a pond in this story. The pond had been stocked many years earlier and pretty much forgotten about, and there were some pretty big catfish in it, as well as bass and various forms of sunfish. My best good tailgating buddy told me that when he'd been a kid, the man is in his late 60s now, he would go fishing in that old farm pond with his Uncle Gimpy. He said Uncle Gimpy loved jokes, and he was always asking him, my friend, if he'd heard any good ones lately. My friend would tell Uncle Gimpy a joke, and if it was good and Gimpy laughed, the laugh came out lazy, if you can even imagine what that might have sounded like. Huh, 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 huh. That's how the man described it, holding his jaw slack, but not actually moving his mouth to enunciate, for you see, even that would have required more energy than Uncle Gimpy was willing to spend. Every now and then, my best good tailgating buddy continued, Aunt Rachel would just get fed up with it. I don't guess she really needed the extra income he might have provided if he had not been a beta male, but it was just the principle of it all. Sometimes people she worked with would ask if Gimpy had gotten a job yet, or if Gimpy was even looking for a job, and her answer was always the same: no. At times like this, when Aunt Rachel would be questioned by her friends or family about Gimpy's lack of doing anything, she would put her foot down and demand Gimpy get a job. And again, every time he would, he'd quit a few days or a few weeks at the most later, except for once. Uncle Gimpy, it turns out, was able to get a job as a motel desk clerk in town. Rachel and everyone else was really pulling for him, figuring that since he had gotten a job where he could sit all day and where he only dealt with customers on occasion, he might actually be able to keep the job. To everyone's surprise, he did. After Gimpy had been on the job for a month, and after he had actually received 2 bi-weekly paychecks, he continued to get up every morning, shower, get dressed, and go to work. However, 2 weeks after this, on payday, he did not receive his paycheck. At least that's the story he relayed to his wife. There was a screw-up with payroll, Gimpy told Rachel when she asked how much he'd received. They told me they'll have it fixed by the next pay period, and I'll just get it on that check. Sorry, I was supposed to transition into Gimpy voice, but I'm too much of an alpha. It's hard for me to talk like a beta. Forgive me. Hey, everybody says in all those strange videos something about bad acting. Perhaps I just proved them right. Potentially. I'll try it again next time Gimpy talks, if he's not too lazy to say another few lines or so. Rachel believed what she'd been told, but when the next pay period came, once again, Gimpy didn't get a paycheck. Sure, he had an excuse, something about the payroll department being incompetent, and he assured her that he'd get one heck of a big paycheck 2 weeks later. This time, she did not believe him. The following Monday, Rachel left for work, but she did not go to work. She decided to take one of her many personal days she had saved up at work and find out just what her ne'er-do-weller husband was up to. She left her house at the normal time, but instead of driving to school, she drove to the motel where Gimpy was working. Instead of parking in the motel's parking lot, she parked in the parking lot of a restaurant across the road from the motel. You know, this is terrible. I'm kind of like staring into this snow white paper as the sun's beating down on it, so it's blinded me. But I'm kind of thinking I'm seeing something of all things strange, orange, moving around back here. You know, just because I'm reading these stories and I'm trying not to break them up like I'm doing right now with unwritten commentary of my own, you must get my 6. There is something like orange back here, messing around. You hear those tree knocks? All right. Okay, the following Monday, Rachel left for work, blah, blah, blah. But instead of going to work, she parked in the motel's parking lot. Or she drove to where Gimpy was working, but instead of parking in the motel's parking lot, she parked in the parking lot of her restaurant across the road from the motel where this deadbeat works, right? Her husband. Half an hour after parking in the lot across the road, she saw Gimpy roll up to the hotel in his car. Actually, it was her car, an old beater left to her by her parents before they died. Gimpy's old beater wasn't dependable enough to drive to work or anywhere else for that matter, because he never had the money to get it repaired when it broke down. And since it was 20 years old and never cared for, not even washed, it broke down often. After parking his car on the far side of the motel lot, reserved for employees no doubt, Rachel watched as a cleaning lady, appearing to be getting off shift, came out of the motel and went to Gimpy's car. Well, Rachel's car that Gimpy drove, but we've already covered that. And she got into the car with them. The car then drove off, and of course, Rachel followed. Gimpy and the cleaning lady drove about a mile up the road to another motel. This was not a nice motel. This was the no-tell motel. The kind that people who are having affairs go to in order to do you know what. Now, here, until a few years later, is where the storyline gets a little mixed up as far as the facts go. My best good tailgating buddy said after all this, he and his mother went out to Rachel and Gimpy's place one weekend so my best good tailgating buddy could fish in the old farm pond. And lo and behold, old Gimpy was gone. My best good tailgating buddy said that Aunt Rachel told him and his mother about what she'd caught Gimpy doing and that she'd thrown him out. Where did he go? My best good tailgating buddy's mom asked Rachel. I don't know and I don't care, Rachel said. But all his stuff's still here, my best good tailgating buddy said at the time. I told him to leave immediately and that he was to take nothing with him because he'd never paid for any of it anyway, and he just left, Rachel had said. Can I still go fishing? My best good tailgating buddy asked. Of course you can, Aunt Rachel said, and he did. Over the years, my best good tailgating buddy would spend a lot of time fishing in that old cow pond, especially during the summer, and especially at night, and especially once he'd reached the age of sipping on cold ones himself, like his Uncle Gimpy always had when he'd fished in the pond. He'd found that magic combination of cold beer on the banks of a catfish hole on a warm Virginia night. I swear to God, he told me at this tailgate party, there were nights I either got shitty drunk or I was hearing things because I could have sworn I heard old Gimpy with that lazy laugh of his a couple of times. He added, I got scared and left. My buddy's Aunt Rachel would eventually pass away. Unfortunately, it was premature as she had developed breast cancer and lost her battle. She died just before her 60th birthday, only having spent a few short years without the albatross of Uncle Gimpy hanging around her neck. She never remarried after she kicked Uncle Gimpy out, my buddy told us. Heck, she didn't even go through the hassle of officially filing for divorce. She was just glad to be rid of that deadbeat, and even though Uncle Gimpy had been blood kin, we were happy for her because she'd always been a really nice lady. And no, we never heard from Uncle Gimpy again, and we all figured we were all the better off for it. As nice and good-natured as he was, he was really nice and friendly. He was nothing more than a grown-ass dependent no one wanted to support. Listen, you got bills to pay. Nice doesn't matter so much, does it? It's a plus. It's always a plus, but come on, man. Producer Parrish. Since Rachel had no children, nor had she had any siblings, she'd left the farm to a not-for-profit organization that benefited children in need. They'd sold the property to a family who my good tailgating buddy actually knew, and they were kind enough to allow him and his family to continue to fish in the old farm pond anytime they wanted. I remember it like it was yesterday, my best good tailgating buddy told us, just as we were about to make the roughly 1 mile trek from our tailgate party in the parking lot across from the UVA track and baseball, softball, and soccer fields in Charlottesville, up Alderman Road to Scott Stadium to get to the game in time for kickoff. There was this one summer when we had what must have been the worst drought in Virginia history. Remember this one for a future tale, okay? That summer was so dry, there wasn't even a single morning when there was dew on the grass. Then, that fall, on Halloween night of all nights, the rain started falling, my best good tailgating buddy said. And it rained like it was never going to stop. It rained buckets of cats and dogs all night and the next day too. We got a call from the family who'd bought the farm once the storm was over, my buddy said. They called to tell us that it had rained so much and flooded so much that the earthen dam at the lower end of the old farm pond had given way and burst, and almost all the water had washed out of the pond. They said there were just a couple of pools of water left, about a foot deep each, and that all the fish in the pond were congregating in these pools, and they asked if we wanted to come over and get any fish. They told us there were some real monster cats in there. I didn't really want any of the fish, my best good tailgating buddy said, but I wanted to see them at least. I wanted to see how big some of those fish were, and I didn't mind helping those people try to save some of the fish if we could figure out a way to do it. So I got my waders, and me and the missus, we didn't have our girl yet, went over there, and what a sight we saw. Boy, I'll tell you, there must have been 24 catfish pulled together in what looked like mud holes that were every bit of 50 pounds each, and I kid you not. I got down there in the mud with that other family and a couple of other people they'd called to come over, and was doing my best to pick up any flopping fish I saw floundering around in the mud. No pun intended, because they weren't flounders. That's a saltwater fish, of course. And after just a few minutes into it all, I heard someone say, "What in tarnation is this?" I looked over, and there's this 12-year-old kid holding up a human arm bone. It was a forearm, and it still had a hand on it. Well, the skeletal remains of a hand. "Holy shit," someone else yelled, and we all got up out of the pond as quick as we could. Someone called 911 and the EMS people came out. I don't know why they sent EMS. Whoever's remains we'd found was obviously past the point of resuscitation. Anyway, my best good tailgating buddy continued. They got some police down in that pond, and they managed to pull out most of the remains, and when they had them all laid out there on the bank, I took one good look at that pile of bones, and I told them I could save them the hassle of an autopsy, or whatever in the hell it is they do with bones to figure out who they belong to, because I knew exactly who those bones had once belonged to. I could tell by the way that one leg was about a foot shorter than the other. It was Uncle Gimpy. Holy shit, me and all my other best good tailgating buddies said at this juncture. Holy shit is right, my best good tailgating buddy said. I reckon we finally knew exactly what had happened to Uncle Gimpy. Aunt Rachel had had enough, and it wasn't bad enough that the man was mooching off of her. But to be out there gallivanting around on her too? Well, I guess Aunt Rachel had decided old Gimpy wasn't good for anything anyway, and she put him, maybe not so much out of his misery, but she definitely put him out of her misery. The police found what looked like a bullet hole right through the middle of the front of his skull, and the exit hole on the backside had taken off most of the back of his skull. I guess the moral of this story might be, if there is a moral to the story, is that if these beta males who are out there living off of a woman, be it the mother who owns the basement they live in, or the wife or live-in girlfriend who's supporting them, think they're safe and they're getting a free ride and they've got it all on cruise control, well, they might want to think again. They might want to think about getting up off of their dignity and getting a job and keeping it, and keeping old one-eyed Willie in their pants when they're at work. Otherwise, I'd say more than just a few of them might end up just like poor old Uncle Gimpy. Hope you enjoyed that story. Hope you come back tomorrow evening here at Homesteading Off the Grid for another tale. It's October 3, going on October 4. We're just still getting warmed up. And what I'll tell you, a lot of these stories are cute here in the beginning of the month, but as we get closer to Halloween and on Halloween night itself, you're going to hear some true tales of terror. And a lot more curse words, so be warned. What in the hell is that back there that looks to be orange?